First time we've had an opportunity to talk to you about it, which is Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETF. We're going to be talking to Gary Gensler, the chair of the SEC, who made that decision reluctantly, maybe even begrudgingly, which was announced just 2 days ago, and we talked a lot about yesterday on the broadcast. How big a deal is that for BlackRock? And this was, for you, a big switch as well, because you were a naysayer for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I probably switched. For the first 3 years of thinking about it, I was a naysayer, and about 2 years ago, I switched. And I'm actually, you know, as I said in the last 2 years, I'm a big believer.
Are you a believer personally? Meaning, is the Fink family a Bitcoin buyer or a buyer of this new ETF?
Well, now I could do that. I cannot, you know, I don't want to compete with our clients, so I don't buy single assets. I'll buy mutual funds. I'll buy single ETFs. So I have an opportunity to do that now. But I'm a believer in it because I do believe it is an alternative source for wealth holding. I don't believe it's ever going to be a currency. I believe it's an asset class.
You don't believe it ever becomes a currency?
No, I think we're going to create digital currencies. We're going to use the technology for it. We're going to use the blockchain.
How important is that, though, to then the long-term value proposition
of Bitcoin?
Of Bitcoin. If it's not something that ultimately becomes a currency, if it's simply, we'll call it digital gold, it's an asset of some sort, what does that mean?
It means,
in terms of price,
I believe, you know, I believe it goes up if the world is more frightened, if people have fearful of geopolitical risk, they're fearful of their own risk. It's no different than what gold represented over thousands of years. It is a asset class that protects you.
Right.
And unlike gold, where we manufacture new gold, we're almost at the ceiling of the amount of Bitcoin that we created.
When you hear somebody like Cathie Wood,
yes,
who was on our broadcast yesterday, say that her base case is that this turns into a $600,000 a Bitcoin valuation, base case, and a million plus in a super optimistic case. Are you anywhere in her realm?
I haven't thought about it. To me, that what we are trying to do is offer an instrument that can store wealth. I think if it gets that even close to that high, gold will represent even a bigger value. And let's be clear, if you think it's digital gold, there's going to be a reference point between gold and Bitcoin. But let me get back to what happened yesterday. You know, a part of our announcement that you mentioned in the opening, that we changed the architecture of our firm.
Right.
And much of it has to do with how we think about iShares and ETFs. When we bought BGI, very few people believed in that acquisition. And we were pretty mistreated for a couple of years, because we said active and passive can coexist. Obviously, we were right in that too. We said the fixed income market will be transformed through ETFs. That has now happened. Yesterday, we had the first day of Bitcoin ETFs. And our reorganization is taking that ethos of what has happened over the last 10 years. We believe ETFs is the technology that's going to transform every asset class. We believe everything will be done through ETFs. And so we believe this is just the beginning, and we needed to embed ETFs across the entire.
So what does that mean? If you're Rick Reeder, who we've had on the broadcast for years.
Rick is now doing more ETFs in his active space now. There's a great example of how we are taking what a very active investor and now putting that into an ETF platform. Let me be clear. I think ETFs are step one in the technological revolution in the financial markets. Step two is going to be the tokenization of every financial asset. And to me, this is where we believe it's going. So we're looking at Bitcoin, we're looking at ETFs in the same manner. These are technological changes that can allow us to move forward.
What did you see yesterday, by the way, in terms of inflows as it relates to Bitcoin?
We were very happy with the flows. It appears that we received about 40% of the flows yesterday. I mean, one day doesn't make anything.
Are these new customers? Are these people who are coming out of other funds? I mean, Grayscale is the biggest player in this space right now. Are you trying to take share from them in terms of taking those clients over, or are you trying to create a new class of customer?
Primarily, we're trying to create an opportunity for new customers can invest in this financial instrument. Over the long run, do we believe, just think about the fee differential between an ETF and some of these trusts.
Right.
These trusts are like 120 basis points.
Very expensive. We were talking with the head of Grayscale yesterday. It's still an expensive product.
And these are 20 to 30 basis points in the ETF wrapper.
Well, it's expensive, by the way, for if you're a Grayscale customer to sell your shares.
Well, it's very
taxes.
expensive. Yes, and this is the big issue with the SEC, and this is something you may want to ask Gary. The industry asked to transfer in kind into an ETF, and that was denied by the SEC. That's a fine.
Meaning, let's just put a fine point on that. The industry, meaning companies like yours, asked the SEC to allow folks who might have owned shares via a Grayscale to be able to transfer those in kind to a BlackRock or to Fidelity or whomever.
And so that there would be no tax ramifications. That was not denied. They wanted to really just create from scratch cash only, which we all respect the SEC's reasoning.
That creates an opportunity actually for Grayscale to keep those customers for a much longer time.
It does, but I think over the long run, when you start adding up the fees, people are going to start thinking about redeeming and then ultimately going into an ETF.
Longer term, do you now expect other cryptocurrency ETFs? Meaning, do you think that Gary, and we'll talk to him later, Gary
like Ethereum,
will have to approve an Ethereum ETF? And is that a function of something the SEC has to do, or do you think that all these things have to go to court first?
I couldn't respond to that. I see value in having an Ethereum ETF. As I said, these are just stepping stones towards tokenization. And I really do believe this is where we're going to be going. We have the technology to tokenize today. If you want to talk about, think about this. If you had a tokenized security and you have a tokenized identity, you, Andrew, the moment you buy or sell an instrument, it is known. It's on a general ledger that is all created together. You want to talk about issues around money laundering and all that. This eliminates all corruption by having a tokenized system.
Jamie Dimon disagrees with you on that, but, or at least to some degree.